Hello team, today we are going to have a lesson dedicated to some network configurations. But it is important in order you can proceed with the course and run all code examples locally on your computer. We are going to start the lesson from remembering and understanding one more time what TCP/IP port terms are. I am going to explain you what is the difference between static and dynamic IP addresses and why we need static IP address and how to request it. After that, we are going to learn what port forwarding is and configure port forwarding together on your router. By the end of this lesson, you are going to have web application deployed on your home computer and available at any point on the earth where internet connection exists. I will also share with you troubleshooting hints that are supposed to help you during the configurations. Let's start our lesson. But first, let me start from the problem statement and explain you why I come up with the idea for this lesson. So, together with my students in my courses, we learned how to create web applications. We deployed them locally, we tested them, and we learned a lot of things. But how to open our applications to the whole world. So in case you want that other users would be able to reach out your web application from different parts of the earth, you need to deploy it on the hosting that would be accessible from anywhere. Basically, you have two main options. Deploy your application on some hosting or to the cloud. This is also an option, but it will cost you some money. Or another option. Make your own computer work like a hosting and expose its address to the world. This option will cost you nothing. In this particular lesson, I want to talk about configuration of your local computer. Because anyway, while you're a student and you want to show your solution to someone or experiment with your application, you don't need to pay for cloud or other hosting. Like I always say, start small and become big. Let's start from the small home-based web hosting and then we'll publish our application to the cloud. Let me share with you details how you can expose your IP address publicly to the internet. For this, you need to configure port forwarding. Today in the video I am going to explain you what port forwarding is. But before we jump to the port forwarding discussion, let's remember one more time what IP address and port are. If you are a student of my course Java from Zero to First Job, then you already know what IP and port is, because we saw the detailed lesson about OSI model. In case you don't remember exactly what IP and port are, let me quickly recap the key points reviewing with you the following example. Imagine that you need to deliver a mail to the receiver. You have address written down on the envelope. You know that you need to deliver mail to the specific address. You know the country, city, concrete street, and concrete building. This is similar to your IP address. So, with the help of IP address, you can find the destination for your message, the concrete computer joined to the network. But when you found the building, you discovered that it has a lot of apartments. Where is your receiver? Where you can find the number of the apartment. And different apartments and buildings are equivalent of the different applications running on the computer. You need to deliver a message to the specific application. And the apartment number is the port number. So the port number is an apartment in the building. Is it clear so far? Thus, the full address of your application in World Wide Web consists from the address of your computer and port number of your application running on that computer. Now, let's understand what TCP is. In this example, TCP is a mailing service that delivers your message to the destination, ensures that the message has been passed, and confirms the delivery. Is it clear? That's why we often say TCP/IP protocol, meaning that we deliver message to the destination with the help of the TCP protocol. TCP is used in conjunction with IP in order to maintain a connection between the sender and the target to ensure packet order. Is it clear now? Great. Let's move on. So, based on this example, I believe you understood that you need to have a fixed address and not change apartments each day, because in this case you won't be able to receive mails. That means that our computer in the network should have the same web address all the times. Namely, your machine, your computer should have the same numeric address today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. IP addresses may be static and dynamic. Sometimes internet providers provide you with dynamic IP address. It has its own pros and cons. But dynamic IP address means that IP address is not stable and it can be changed after some time passed or after router reloading, for example. What to do in this case? In this case, you need to call to the customer support of your internet provider and request a static IP address. Most of the providers provide such services. Talking about me, I have multiple homes in different countries. That's why I deal with internet providers too often. So, only at one of my places there was dynamic IP address, but provider dedicated fixed IP address for me the next day after the request. In my two other apartments, there is a static IP address, so no problems there. I bet you did a note for yourself to request static IP address in case you have dynamic IP address. But how to check whether you have static or dynamic IP address? The easiest possible way is to observe IP address changes. Monitor the behavior of your IP address over time. If it remains the same for an extended period, it is likely a static IP address. However, if the IP address changes periodically or after specific events such as router restarts, it is likely a dynamic IP address. You can use different services online that would tell you what is your IP address. Another proven way to clarify whether you have static or dynamic IP address is to make a call to your internet provider. Contact your internet service provider and inquire about the type of IP address they assigned to you. They can provide information on whether it is a static IP address, which remains the same over time, or a dynamic IP address, which can change periodically. So, I believe now we can move on and learn more about port forwarding. Port forwarding is a technique used in networking to redirect network traffic from one port on a device's network interface to another port on a different device or network. It allows incoming network connections to reach a specific port on a device that would otherwise be inaccessible or hidden behind a firewall or network address translation, shortly called NAT. Here is a simplified explanation of how port forwarding works. Network communication is based on IP addresses and port numbers. An IP address identifies a device on a network, and port number identifies a specific application or service running on that device. We already learned at the beginning of the lesson how it works. When a device receives network traffic, it checks the destination IP address and port number to determine which application or service should handle that traffic. In some cases, a device may be located behind a firewall or NAT, network address translation, which can block incoming connections or hide internal IP addresses from the external network. Port forwarding allows you to configure the firewall or NAT to redirect incoming network traffic from a specific port on the external network to a different port on a specific device or network within the internal network. You are going to have a need to configure port forwarding in the following cases. For example, for remote access. Port forwarding enables remote access to devices or services within a private network. For example, you can forward the SSH secure shell port to remotely connect to a server or forward the HTTP port to access a web server. Hosting services. If you want to host a website, web application, game server, or any other service within your local network, port forwarding allows external users to reach those services by redirecting the incoming traffic to the appropriate device. Peer-to-peer applications. Some peer-to-peer applications, like BitTorrent or online gaming, require incoming connections to be able to connect to other peers. Port forwarding ensures that incoming connections are properly directed to the requesting device. It's important to note that configuring port forwarding may involve security considerations. Opening ports and exposing services to the Internet can potentially increase the risk of unauthorized access or attacks. Therefore, it is crucial to carefully configure and secure the devices and services involved in port forwarding. Let me share with you how-to guide. How to configure port forwarding step by step. The first step. Open command line and learn IP address of your device. On the Windows-based machines, you can run command ipconfig in your command prompt. On the Linux-based machines and Mac, you need to execute ipconfig command in terminal. Find IP version 4 address in the section Adapter of Wireless Network. Remember this IP address. This is IP address of your computer, of your device. And when you will run your web application on your computer, we would need to configure port forwarding to this device. The next thing. Check your Wi-Fi router. Usually Wi-Fi routers has sticker with the details of admin access to the configurations. It consists from IP address and admin password. Remember it. Open configurations of Wi-Fi router by accessing IP address and using password that you found on the sticker on your router. Check the manual of your specific web router, or check all possible menus and try to find port forwarding configurations. When you found port forwarding menu, you need to specify the following configurations. Local IP address. That is the address that we found in the command line. Local port. That is the port where your application will be running. In case we want to deploy our web app to the Tomcat server or run our Spring Boot application, by default it is port 8080. In case you use any custom port, you need to specify it here. External port. Here you can specify any port you wish. This port will be used in combination with your public IP address to access your application. Protocol. You need to specify whether this port forwarding will be used for TCP or UDP or both. Some routers don't have such detailed configuration, so potentially you may not have it. That's it. The next thing that you need to do is to verify that you configured properly all the settings. You already know your external IP address, because I believe you clarified your external IP address at the beginning of this lesson. Deploy your web application and make sure your web application is up and running on your computer at the port configured in port forwarding configurations. Desirably to test access from external network. For example, you can use your mobile phone. Just turn off the Wi-Fi and turn on your 5G connection. Try to send the request to the following address. Your external IP address that you found in Google or any other specific service, the port that you configured in port forwarding as external, and test endpoint in your web application that should return some response. In case you can see that you hit endpoint and response is returned to you successfully, then everything was configured properly. If you see an error, then you need to check all configurations one more time very carefully. Explore the slides slowly. Make sure that you did the right mapping. Your local IP address of your device, the port where your application is running, mapped to your public IP address with the public port configured. Even in case there will be some challenges, please do not hesitate to ask your questions below the video and I will be happy to answer. And just one more time, take a look at this hint that would help you during the troubleshooting of your settings in case something is going wrong. So imagine that your local IP address that you learned from the command line is 192.168.0.99. You deployed your application at default port 8080. In port forwarding, you specified that request forwarding should happen when user requests port 8080.99. Your external IP address is 82.64.100.123. Your test endpoint is Hello World. That means that when you send request from outside of your network to the IP address 82.64.100.123 and port 88.99 and endpoint Hello World, the request forwarding should forward the request to the internal IP address in your network to 192.168.0.99, port 8080 and endpoint Hello World. Is it clear? In case you would have any challenges, let me know in comments below the video and I will try to help. In case you configured everything, then everything is super and you're ready for the next lesson. Let's recap what we have learned in this video. We remembered what TCP/IP and port terms mean. Now you know what static and dynamic IP addresses are. Also, I explained port forwarding. Together we configured port forwarding on your router. And at the end of the lesson, I shared with you troubleshooting hints. That's all for this lesson. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a great day and see you in the next lesson.